Wang Fuk Court committee lawyer parcels out blame among various parties. Hong Kong passes bill on Huanggang arrangements. And President Xi Jinping sets out China as global AI leader. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. The senior counsel representing the independent committee at the Wang Fuk Court's public hearing says residents were failed by professionals with a callous disregard for fire safety. Mimosa Ngai reports.
The final public hearing resumes at Central City Gallery. Victor Dawes, the senior counsel representing the independent committee, started his closing address by thanking everyone who has assisted the investigation. Referring to the fire as preventable but not prevented and foreseeable but not foreseen, Dawes points out that contractors and consultants for the Wang Fuk Court renovation project bear the primary responsibility for the tragedy. He says the professionals completely ignored fire safety and failed the Wang Fuk Court residents. On scaffolding mesh, the barrister says Prestige deliberately concealed the use of non-fire retardant nets, even though it was fully aware of the issue with the material. Dawes states that the contractor deceived the Independent Checking Unit, or ICU, and the Labour Department by presenting them with a false certificate of the mesh. On the shutdown of fire alarm systems, Dawes says Victory Fire, Wang Fuk Court's fire service installation contractor, stayed silent after discovering the master power switches in the fire service pump rooms had been turned off. He says that if Victory Fire had at least notified the fire services department about the situation, the alarms could have worked on the day of the tragedy. Dawes also states that the government carries a partial responsibility for the fire because the disaster has revealed long-standing issues that authorities had never detected. Noting that the government has implemented some improvement measures, he highlights several systematic weaknesses among the official bureaus. One is that the ICU failed to conduct on-site inspections at Wang Fuk Court throughout the renovation period. Dawes says the unit ran a complaint-only inspection. Officers would visit Wang Fuk Court when receiving complaints. He questions how the unit could exercise regulatory functions when operating with such a passive system. Dawes says another grave failure of the ICU was that it did not detect worker access openings in backstairs and a breach of fire safety, despite the clear photographic evidence. The closing submission also provides some recommendations for the government to consider, including an immediate ban on access openings and on the storage of flammable, temporary materials above ground levels. To conclude, Dawes says the best way to pay respect to victims is to learn from the lessons of the tragedy. He says this will prevent any other community in Hong Kong from enduring the same. Mamos Nai, TVB News.
The government announces a 2-year rental grant of $300,000 per unit will be allocated from the support fund to Wang Fuk Court owners. The aim is to help them rebuild their long-term homes with greater flexibility. Owners are qualified for the grant regardless of the option they choose under the government's long-term housing arrangement plan. The grant will last until December 21, 2027. The Legislative Council's Finance Committee approves an additional $1 billion for the government's long-term rehousing plan for Wang Fuk Court, bringing the total funding to $5 billion. The additional allocation will support the government's proposal to acquire ownership of all 8 residential blocks in the estate, including Wang Chi House. Speaking at the committee meeting, Deputy Financial Secretary Michael Wong says, as of Thursday, 1,786 households, or more than 90% of all households, had signed and returned letters accepting the government's acquisition offer. As of Friday, 769 households had also signed formal sale and purchase agreements. The government has already disbursed compensation to more than 10 owners, with most receiving payments of around $3 million. Cases involving the flat-for-flat rehousing option are expected to take longer to process. The Legislative Council has passed the Huanggang Port Hong Kong Port Area Bill that has cleared the way for the new co-location arrangement at the redeveloped port. The Legislative Council held an additional meeting to resume the second reading debate on the Huanggang Port Hong Kong Port Area Bill. Lawmakers raised concerns over the transport arrangements and system stability at the new border crossing.
Members also requested that the authorities put in place appropriate measures to manage passenger and vehicle flows at the Huanggang Port so as to avoid congestion during peak periods, which could affect clearance efficiency. Before, we had system errors that have caused long queues. We have such system errors again. The consequences are dire. There should be contingency plans in place to make sure there won't be a total breakdown of operations of the port.
The new Huanggang Port passenger terminal is located within Shenzhen. Under authorization from China's State Council, the Hong Kong port area will operate under Hong Kong jurisdiction and laws, adopting the co-location arrangement with joint inspection and one-time clearance. Concluding the debate, Secretary for Security Chris Tang says the government has arranged 7 franchise bus routes, 6 green minibus routes, and cross-boundary coach services linking the new port with different districts across Hong Kong.
To provide the best possible convenience for the cross-boundary travelers, we will monitor the level of service and, depending on the circumstances, make adjustment accordingly.
After nearly 4 hours of debate, lawmakers passed the bill in its second reading. It was then approved at its third reading without objection. The government said it will gazette the legislation as soon as possible and work with Shenzhen authorities to advance relevant preparations. It adds that the opening date of the crossing will be announced in due course. At the new Huanggang Port Joint Checkpoint building, directional signs for cross-boundary vehicles have already been installed, while parts of the area outside remain unpaved. And as the opening of the new Huanggang Port is expected to make cross-border commuting more convenient for residents living nearby, it could also drive up residential rents. A 2-bedroom apartment of nearly 800 square feet now rents for around 8,500 yuan a month, marking a rise in rentals by around 8%. Once operational, the new checkpoint is expected to handle around 200,000 passenger trips a day. President Xi Jinping delivers a keynote speech at the opening ceremony of 2026 World Artificial Intelligence Conference in Shanghai, emphasizing the need to advance AI development and governance for the benefit of all humanity. Gloria Feng has the story.
Addressing the conference, Chinese President Xi Jinping presents 4 observations on AI development and governance, including upholding openness and win-win cooperation, strengthening risk awareness, fostering inclusiveness, and advocating solidarity to improve global governance. Xi mentions artificial intelligence is entering an unprecedented period of innovation, bringing enormous opportunities while posing new governance challenges. He says we must strengthen guardrails, prevent abuse and malicious use to ensure AI is always under human control, opposing overextending the concept of national security in the field of AI by placing one country's security over that of others. Xi also stresses AI development should not be a solo performance by any one country, but rather a symphony of global cooperation. As a responsible major country, China remains committed to the greater good of humankind in the field of AI. He announces over the next 5 years, China will provide 5,000 training opportunities in artificial intelligence to developing countries, establish international AI application cooperation centers, and promote AI-powered weather warning solutions, the Mazu system, to be deployed and applied in 30 countries. Gloria Feng, TVB News.
A landslide in southwest China's Chongqing municipality buries several residential buildings, trapping an undetermined number of residents. At least 10 people have been rescued. Luna Bai reports.
The landslide struck at around 9 o'clock a.m. on Friday in Chongqing's Pengshui County, near the Wujiang Third Bridge. Community workers spotted falling rocks about an hour earlier and evacuated more than 60 residents. But part of a hillside suddenly collapsed, burying more than 10 residential buildings, leaving local residents trapped and unaccounted for. State broadcaster CCTV said at least 10 people have so far been rescued, with no life-threatening injuries, as search and rescue operations are continuing. Images by CCTV showed large slabs of rock sliding beside buildings into a waterway below. 2 buildings that looked about 5 and 15 stories high were damaged but still standing. Authorities said an all-out research and rescue mission had been launched, with hundreds of rescuers involved. Luna Bai, TVB News.
Welcome back. U.S. President Donald Trump used U.S. primetime TV to assert Chinese interference in U.S. elections in 2020. In Beijing, the foreign ministry dismissed his claims. Danny Rao tells us more.
The 25-minute primetime address underscored U.S. President Donald Trump's efforts to make election security a central political issue ahead of November's midterm elections, when his fellow Republicans will be defending their slender congressional majorities. Trump said the declassified material would reveal shocking vulnerabilities in the U.S.'s election infrastructure.
Our purpose in disclosing this information is not to weaken confidence in election, but to earn that confidence by confronting vulnerabilities and correcting them very, very quickly, and that's what we're doing. The documents cover 5 major areas of concern. First, they show that over a period of years, starting during the 2020 election cycle, the People's Republic of China carried out what is believed to be the largest compromise of election data in history, resulting in China's illicit acquisition of 220 million U.S. voter files. Compounding the travesty, the second set of documents we are releasing reveals that members of the deep state, very, very famous group of people, in many cases, in our intelligence agency work to actively suppress and downplay information about the extent of China's sinister election meddling.
Trump's speech presented allegations of interference and influence in ways that lacked key context, and did not produce evidence that votes had been manipulated or that the election outcome had been altered. Repeated audits and reviews, many run by Republicans, including Trump's own then Attorney General, have found no significant fraud occurred in 2020. Trump's harsh language about China risked rocking a relationship that has steadied following last year's costly trade war. Trump hopes to meet with President Xi Jinping in September about improving trade relations. In Beijing, the foreign ministry said the allegations by the US are entirely fabricated and aimed at vilifying China, and have long been proven to be groundless. The ministry added China has been upholding the principle of non-interference in other countries' internal affairs, has no interest in interfering in US elections, and has never done so. US TV networks were split on whether to air Donald Trump's controversial address live. CNN, ABC and NBC chose not to air the speech live, while CBS and Fox at least aired large portions of it in real time. Trump has since called out ABC and NBC and suggested they should lose their licenses to broadcast. General TV News.
Evacuation orders remain in effect in northeastern Minnesota as authorities work to contain 15 active wildfires in Lake County. 2 of the largest fires have each burned more than 55 square kilometers and crossed into Canada. This as more than 180 wildfires continue to rip through forests in northwestern Ontario, and pungent smoke seeps across the border, prompting air quality warnings in the U.S. from the Great Lakes to parts of the East Coast. Gloria Feng again.
A thick, gloomy haze masks the iconic Manhattan skyline as wildfires continue to wreak havoc across the border in Ontario, Canada. State officials distribute tens of thousands of face masks and open cooling centers as New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani says public schools, parks, and other city agencies are moving activities indoors, rescheduling events, and adjusting operations. Air quality is expected to spike to very unhealthy from Buffalo in the state's western corner to Rochester by Lake Ontario, Syracuse in the central region, down to greater New York City area. Other cities across the Great Lakes states, too, register air quality ranging from unhealthy to hazardous. Officials are urging residents to stay inside air-conditioned spaces and wear masks regardless of health conditions. This tourist visiting Chicago who suffers from asthma struggles to cope with the smoke-filled air and is buying masks and an inhaler in preparation.
I do have asthma, but it rarely comes out, but something like this will definitely trigger it, so I wanted to be 100% certain I wouldn't have to run to the ER or anything like that.
A number of sporting events have been disrupted, including in Philadelphia and Chicago. Concerns are raised over the air quality for the upcoming World Cup match in New Jersey Sunday, as Spain held its first training session on Thursday. Gloria Fung, TVB News.
Andy Burnham has officially become leader of Britain's governing Labour Party on Friday, clearing his final hurdle to taking office as Prime Minister next week.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much.
The centre-left party has announced the result of a leadership contest to replace departing Prime Minister Keir Starmer, in which Burnham is the only contender. He has secured nominations from 379 of the 403 Labour lawmakers in the House of Commons as of Thursday night. Burnham, the former mayor of Great Manchester, has been Prime Minister in waiting for weeks, but he has revealed little detail about his policy priorities. Protesters gathered in Ukraine on Thursday after its President Volodymyr Zelensky decided to dismiss the popular defense minister. JUL reports.
Protesters flocked into the streets on Thursday in Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, as President Volodymyr Zelensky decided to dismiss the youthful defense minister, Mikhailo Fedorov. Fedorov is widely regarded by the public as one of Ukraine's most effective ministers, who is credited with driving drone technology innovation for the military and leading anti-corruption efforts within the defense ministry. For many protesters, the demonstration is about preserving the momentum of Ukraine on the battlefield. Many are worrying that when Fedorov is dismissed, all the efforts will be in vain and could be reversed under a new leadership.
Of course, I'm exhausted, but those feelings in my back, in my legs, there's a shaking, my head feels a little bit numb, but it's nothing compared to what we will face tomorrow and after tomorrow and years after. It's nothing compared to the people that are suffering high in the front line.
Zelensky's attempt to reshuffle his wartime government, which included replacing a prime minister as well, could become a test of his political authority, as Ukraine's fight against Russia's full-scale invasion has lasted for more than 4 years. It is understood that Fedorov's ideas clash with the traditional military establishment, as Zelensky confirmed the dismissal was driven by a long-running friction between the defense ministry and Ukraine's commander-in-chief. JUL, TVB News.
A total smoking ban on construction sites takes effect today. The Labour Department sends officers to inspect sites, while contractors and workers are imposing measures to adapt to the ban. Alina Wang has more.
The ban on smoking at construction sites takes effect today. Anyone who smokes on a construction site is subject to a fine of $3,000. Contractors also have a duty to ensure that no one smokes on site. Those who fail to do so may face a maximum fine of $400,000. The government's enforcement starts today, including surprise inspections on construction sites with no grace period granted. Commissioner for Labor Sam Hui visits a site in To Kwa Huan to inspect the smoking ban situation.
This morning, we inspected through surprise inspection a total number of 58 construction sites, in which we have issued at least one fixed penalty, and this enforcement action will carry on as our regular work in the context of the overall responsibility of the Labour Department in safeguarding occupational safety in construction sites.
Meanwhile, many construction sites post notices and display electronic signs at entrances. Some sites impose more preventing measures, including requiring workers to deposit cigarettes and lighters, conducting pre-entry backpack checks, and setting thermal imaging monitors within the site. This worker says the surveillance leaves no blind spots, and they are seeking alternatives, hoping to start by giving up buying cigarettes. Industry insiders consider the first-day enforcement reasonable, yet express concern that relying completely on manual inspections is insufficient, and argue that encouraging workers to quit smoking is a more sustainable long-term solution. Contractors and workers are adapting to the ban to back the safety goal, yet further publicity and enforcement will determine the outcome. Alina Wang, TVB News.
And that's the news. Thank you for watching.